scared when they try doing that thing? Yeah? Doing new stuff is scary, right? Like, this is the second time I've ever talked at Youth Church, and today's been pretty scary for me. Now, hands up again. Who's ever talked to one of their friends at school about their faith? Yeah? Who found that scary? Some people, hands going down. It can be a scary thing, right? I remember doing it when I was at school, and even now at uni. It's scary, because you don't know how they're going to respond. You don't know whether they're going to ask you a question you don't know. You don't know if they're just going to not be interested. Or it could go great, and you don't know what it is. And what I find scary about it is those what-ifs, right? It's not the actually doing it that's scary. It's the, well, what if this happens? But here's the thing, right? It's okay to be scared. And if we look in the Bible, a lot of people, they're like the cool guys in the Bible, right? They did amazing things. They got really scared. Moses literally, he split a sea in two, right? Like, that's pretty sick. And yet he got scared. So we're going to look a little bit at Moses in the burning bush. This is like the first, proper time Moses sort of meets God. And that's a scary thing. When people meet God in the Bible, sort of in a face-to-face sort of encounter, they're often quite scared because God is just so powerful. So we're going to set the scene, right? So Moses just, standard shepherd, just rocking around with his flock, letting them, go graze in a good spot. And so he takes them to this mountain, which is later known as Mount Sinai, because it's where the Ten Commandments, come from. And there's this bush, and the bush just happens to be, on fire. Can we get some smoke, just for effect? Just for some fun, because, I've got the power with the mic. And this bush, it stays on fire, right? It's not burning out. Like a bush in the desert, it's pretty hot. That's going to burn pretty quick, and then it's going to, I think that'll do, or I'm going to start, breathing this stuff in. So he goes to check it out, right? And it's already a bit of a weird sight, because it's not burning up. So already I'm a little bit scared if I was Moses. But he's all right. He goes and has a look. And the next thing he gets up to this bush, and God starts talking. Now, at this point, if I was Moses, I have just pooped my pants. And Moses is pretty scared too. So we're going to, pick out little verses from the story. It's Exodus 3 to, halfway through Exodus 4. I think it's 4:17. But we're just going to pick out random verses. So just after God starts talking, so verses 5 and 6 of Exodus 3 say, "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. So instantly Moses is scared, right? And then God's like, "Look, mate, I want to use you, so you're going to go back to Egypt, which is the place you fled because you've killed someone. And you're going to go to the Pharaoh, who probably hates you, and you're going to tell him to let all of his slaves go. And he's going to listen." At this point, Moses is probably even more scared because of all the stuff that God's just asked him to do. And so Moses starts thinking about these what-if questions. Those questions like, well, what if my friend asks a difficult question? What if they're not interested? And he asks quite a lot of them. So in verse 11, he says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" In verse 13, Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I tell them then?" In chapter 4, verse 1, Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" In chapter 4, verse 10, Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." And finally, in chapter 4, verse 13, but Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. please send someone else. See, at every turn, Moses is scared. And that's okay, right? We're allowed to be scared. It's okay to be scared. And actually, God doesn't mind when we get scared. It's not going to change God's mind and be like, oh, I don't think I'll use you for this thing that I've asked you to do anymore because you're too scared. He's going to encourage you instead. He's not going to go and give up on you because that's not who God is. And yeah, what God was asking Moses to do was a really big thing. But that doesn't mean we can't be scared for smaller things too, right? So what do we do when we're scared? Well, do we try and push it away and hide it? Do we try and just put on a brave face and see if we can do what we're trying to do? See, to me, that sounds a bit silly. Instead, we can do what Moses did. We can take our fears to God. Because God loves us and he wants to support us, right? Which means he's not going to just brush away our fear because he doesn't want us to be scared. But it also doesn't mean that he's not going to ask us to do stuff that we're not comfortable with sometimes. Sometimes God will ask us to do things that are out of our comfort zone. And that's okay too. So, if we know it's okay to be scared, and we know it's okay to bring our fears to God, well, what does God do with them, right? So, this passage also is a really great example of that. After Moses asked God why he chose him, God says this in verse 11 of chapter 3. I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Now, God reassures Moses that he's going to be there every step of the way, right? Helping Moses out. But when Moses later asks what to do if the Israelites don't believe that he was sent by God, God gives him these signs, the ones that we often talk about, like throwing his stick on the ground so God can turn it into a snake. And then Moses questions his own ability. And so God encourages Moses again in chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. See, God doesn't encourage Moses by saying, you know what, you're pretty sick, mate. What he does is he says, well, I'm going to be with you. And I've got this, so you don't need to worry. If we look throughout the Bible, all of those guys that do the really cool stuff, whenever they get called, they're not qualified. See, God didn't call Moses because he was like, you are amazing at speaking. Moses clearly knows he's not. But it's okay because God's got it. It's not about whether you're qualified to do it. It's about whether God's qualified. And he always is, right? That's pretty cool, isn't it? It doesn't matter how good we are at something. God isn't asking us to go and make sure we're the best before we go. He just, asked us to do it with him. And then finally, right at the end, when Moses asks, can you send someone else? It's only at this point that God gets angry. Like the whole time, God is really calm and chill and just like encouraging Moses and telling him it's going to be all right. And then Moses says, well, can you send someone else? And God gets angry. And he's not angry because Moses is scared still after all this encouragement. God's fine with that. See, what God has just said is, trust me. I've got this, so you don't have to. And Moses isn't trusting God. That's why he says send someone else. So God doesn't ask us when he asks us to do something to go and practice until we can do it in our sleep. He doesn't ask us to be some recruiter and go and find the best person for the job with all the right qualifications and that guy who happened to be incredible at public speaking in the poetry competition or something, right? All he's saying is trust me. And that's all we have to do. See, I remember year 7. It was a bit of a scary thing. As joining year 7 can be, you want to make friends, and it's really exciting. And you guys that are going to year 7 soon are going to love it. I had some people from my primary school who weren't very nice, and for some reason, They thought, my mum worked at my secondary school and she gave me a lift because, I didn't want to walk. Seems pretty normal, right? They decided to bully me about it because they're weird. And so I got a little bit scared. But I prayed about it. And I gave my fears to God. And the next day, I went into school and the bullying stopped instantly. Like, they never said anything again. Like, God has got your back. And sharing our faith can be scary too. But it's something that God wants every single one of us here to do. It's something that God has called everyone to do. And he's going to help you with it. And he wants you to lean on him and rely on him and trust him. So if you're in a situation where you're scared, all you've got to do is pray. And it can be a long prayer. Say, I don't know, you've got an exam next week that you're scared about. You can take your time to pray about it. Or maybe you are talking to a friend and they ask how church went and you get a little nervous about what they're going to think. You can pray for literally a second. God's still going to hear it. It doesn't matter how long. And here's the thing. That doesn't mean we don't have to put in the hard work. Moses still had to go and confront the Pharaoh. But it's not all on us. When God asks us to do stuff, he asks us to join him in doing it. He's going to be the one doing the heavy lifting. So I've got a challenge for you guys. And my challenge is this. Next time you're scared about something, pray. It can be like a fire and forget prayer. That's literally like 2 seconds long. But pray about it and see what happens when you lean on God.